I think that's roughly the time. We have 15 people so far. So let me just do a brief introduction of myself and also Antalpha Labs, and then maybe I'll pass it off to Kristof for a quick intro and also a presentation for Pimlico. So I'm Steve. I'll be the host for tonight. I am actually a student at University of Pennsylvania doing a dual degree in business administration and also computer science. And I'm hosting this event on behalf of Antalpha Labs, which is a non-for-profit developer community that hosts co-learning camps, sharing sessions, and also our very on the top of the crown type of event, which is the Hacker House. And I'm also going to throw in a advertisement for that. So personally, I've been a hacker with Antalpha Labs for 2 times so far, and we're going to be hosting a account abstraction themed Hacker House in Montenegro, starting from May 18th through like 24th. So in case you haven't signed up or have a great project idea you want to do that, definitely sign up. We will be sharing the link in a bit. And so that should be my intro. And for today's talk, we are just very honored to have Kristof, who's the founder of Pimlico, over to the talk, which is a series of talk themed as like account abstraction. And last time we actually had Biconomy and also like Soul Wallet, etc. over. And for folks who don't know yet, Pimlico is basically actually one of the top infrastructure provider for ERC-20 and Kristof himself is also the other co-author of the protocol for account abstraction at Ethereum Foundation. So without further ado, I'll just pass off the mic to you, Kristof, for a presentation. And the format for today's like event is roughly going to be like 20 or 30-ish minutes for the presentation, and then we're going to open up the mic for everyone to give any kind of like Q&A, or folks are also welcome to just type in your question in the chat. Yeah, so I'll just pass it off to you, Kristof.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the intro. Yeah, so I guess, yeah, just again, just a bit of a recap about myself. Hey, I'm Kristof. I started off my Ethereum journey at Nethermind, actually, where I was an initial Ethereum core developer and then an Ethereum core researcher. And during my time as an Ethereum core researcher at Nethermind is when I started working on account abstraction, and is when I co-authored ERC-20 along with all the other amazing folks that I'm sure you've heard of, like Yoav, Dror, Shahaf, Vitalik, and co. And then a few months ago is when I founded Pimlico. And so our mission is to be the underlying infrastructure layer for these new generation of wallets that are being built on the standard. Yeah, just a really quick, guys, I'm sure you have heard like a million times what this ERC is, so I'm just boring you to death here, which is a very, very quick recap. Is ERC-20 allows Ethereum to get the benefits of account abstraction without requiring a hard fork process. And so what are these benefits? Benefits include things like, abstraction away of gas fees, allowing delegation of gas fees by paymasters. And this means, being able to pay with ERC-20 tokens for gas fees, being able to have third parties sponsor your gas fees, and anything you can code in Solidity. Basically, you can make a condition for gas fee payment. You can completely abstract away the signature scheme. You can use any signature you want natively inside your wallet now, such as multi-sig, social recovery, post-quantum safe signatures, etc. You can have batched transactions, so you no longer will have to have the problem of approve and then swap, and these very minor quirks that we're always annoyed by. And so the way this ERC achieves this is by doing what no other EIP before it has done, right? Previously, there was EIP 86, EIP, and EIP 2938, and they were really cool ways of potentially getting account abstraction on Ethereum, but they all required hard forks. And so the big innovation here is that with ERC, instead of managing the flow of these abstracted away user operations inside the protocol itself, we actually manage them inside a smart contract that lives on the Ethereum chain. And we call this the entry point contract. So what this contract does is it orchestrates the flow of the transaction, which would not be handled by the protocol. So it verifies the signature on chain, it takes gas fees on chain, and then it does the execution step on chain, and then it finishes off the whole flow and does any remaining accounting all on chain. And because it's on chain, because it's managed by smart contracts, you have to change nothing about the protocol itself, right? What you end up doing is you completely modularize away the different steps involved in making a transaction happen, right? So you introduce what we call bundlers, right? So these are private normal Ethereum accounts that are responsible for relaying these user operations on chain and sending them through this entry point contract to be executed. And we have the wallet contracts, right? Now, wallet contracts have a way easier time being built because they don't anymore need to manage the whole flow of transactions and manage relaying of transactions themselves. They can completely outsource that to these external entities, right? So all they have to do is implement this check and pay function, which is the validate user op function. And if they do, then they're already compatible with this EIP. So we try and make it very, very simple. You only need to implement one single function to be compatible. And finally, really worth mentioning is paymasters. So paymasters are entities that you can delegate the payment of gas fees to, and they can decide themselves on chain if they want to, if they are willing to sponsor this user operation on behalf of the wallet that delegated this gas payment. And so again, this is decided by the paymaster itself, right? So any custom logic can be applied, and this will come into play in a bit. So, the problem with this is that, we had this amazing theoretical framework, but how this EIP, the CLC could work, right? We had all these different systems, but I realized after a year of working on AA that while this really works really well in practice, and that while, wallets have already started building on top of this ELC, which is amazing to see, we didn't actually really have, in practical terms, access to entities like, paymasters, like bundlers, that are really crucial to making this ELC work and making wallets' lives easier. And so I realized, the biggest thing I could do to increase adoption of this ELC, of account abstraction in general, is to actually build up a layer which wallets can leverage to make full use of this ELC. And that's how Pimlico came about. And so we're focused on two main things right now. And I'm going to just try and be very casual when I explain this. If you have any more questions afterwards, feel free to contact me. So our first focus is bundling, right? And so you can see on the right, not so long ago, we got a grant from the Ethereum Foundation to build an ELC 447 bundler in TypeScript, right? And that's, we're extremely happy about that. But many people ask, like, okay, why TypeScript? Or why didn't you choose some other language, right? And, it's a fair question because it's worth noting that the reference implementation of the bundler made by ETH Infinitism is in TypeScript, as well as EtherSpot are building, they're a really cool team. They're also building a bundler in TypeScript. We felt that even though there were these two implementations, one reference, one which is aiming to be a production implementation, since TypeScript is still the biggest sort of ecosystem language of Ethereum, no matter how much people love to use Rust and love to talk about Rust and Go, it still is by far the largest ecosystem. There's actually still many libraries that are coming out, which would be really useful to have things built on top of them for, right? So for instance, all the other implementations right now, they're using, combination of ethers.js as well as Hardhat. We really try to take a different approach when building ours, right? So for instance, we're using this new, the new library VM made by the WAGMI team, which has been getting a lot of attention. We're also trying to leverage more Foundry-based tools like Anvil for our development. We're also extremely focused on modularity, right? Trying to split up are bundled into separate packages, which hopefully people will be able to use for their own projects later on, right? So really trying to contribute to the ecosystem, especially building on top of these new libraries like VM. We're also really focused on type safety, right? And so that we feel like can provide a really more reliable user experience eventually. And finally, a big focus for us is execution reliability, right? So making sure that if you submit a user operation to be included, if it remains valid, it will be included on chain, right? Even if things like reorgs happen, even if things like sudden gas price increases happen, we feel like bundles are such core parts of the ecosystem that they really should maintain all solutions for all these different edge cases that these scripts encounter. Our second focus is on paymasters, right? So there's three main paymasters that we're very much focused on right now. And these are the verifying paymasters, sponsorship paymasters, and ERC-20 paymasters. Many people throughout the time tweeting about this have been quite confused, and I can see why, between especially the verifying and sponsorship paymasters that we're building. So I thought it's a good opportunity to try and explain the difference between them. So verifying paymasters are extremely straightforward, right? There's a wallet operator, and they create an op that their user wants to execute, and they want to sponsor the gas fees themselves for this op for their user. Eventually, they can charge something downstream, so it's not like they necessarily have to pay the final bill for it, but they want to sponsor it with their own custom logic. So what they can do is they can send this user operation to us, Pimlico, and we basically sign it on our backend and return it to them in a way that when we return the signature to them, when they execute this user operation and they select our paymaster to be the one who the gas fee gets delegated to, we see that the on-chain smart contract sees that we are the ones who have signed this user operation. It recognizes that, and it's like, okay, Pimlico signed it. Okay, let's sponsor it on-chain. Let's sponsor it for the user. And so it actually saves a lot of steps for these wallet creators. They no longer have to, because of this, maintain and deploy and constantly check up on all these separate paymaster contracts and every chain that they're live on. It means they don't have to worry about refilling these gas tokens on every single chain and maintaining those balances, keeping track of them, monitoring them. It also means they don't have to constantly on or offboard tokens, like off or on ramp tokens, because it often happens that these wallet projects make revenue off chain via subscriptions or something similar, but of course all this paymaster logic happens on chain, so they constantly have to on ramp funds basically on chain to be able to manage them. And so we're really trying to take this responsibility off their backs. Now, second one, the sponsorship paymaster, it's a bit different. So instead of the question being, please sign this op, can you sign this op for me? Like, plain and simple, and we just blindly sign it. What happens is the question they ask is, okay, is anyone that you are close to willing to sponsor this op? Not us, we don't want to sponsor it, but do any of the people want to sponsor it? And so what we would do is we basically go to all the dApps that are signing up to a sponsorship paymaster service and ask them, hey, here's this op, we got this from the wall. Like, here's what it does. Here's what the things it calls. Here's the things, how much it pays, etc. Are you willing to sponsor this user operation? And they basically tell us, based on their conditions, yes, we're willing to sponsor it, or no, we're not. And so the logic here is, they ask the question, and we go to every single dApp, every single potential sponsorer of these transactions, and they tell us if they're willing to sponsor it or not. And then if any of them are willing to do it, then we basically return and sponsor it on their behalf. And we return the signature to the wallet operator. And so this allows for something very cool, in my opinion, which is that now these dApps who want to sponsor these operations, by signing up to us, they're able to get access and potentially sponsor operations from a lot of different wallets. they won't need to integrate every single one separately and go through all that process. They can basically integrate with one provider, and that manages the whole flow. And also a very cool part of it is that they don't need to do any technical integration on the dApp side, right? So all they need to do is basically jot down the conditions under which they want to sponsor, and they won't need to maintain any APIs, any production APIs. They won't need to really do anything beyond loading up tokens that can be used for sponsorship. And so all the logic can be handled by us. Finally is the ERC-20 Paymaster. This is one of the things that many people have been extremely excited about when it comes to ERC 457, right? Is the concept that you'll be able to very easily pay from now on with ERC-20 tokens for your gas fees, right? Instead of native tokens. And so the sort of thing we're really focused on when it comes to our Paymaster, for our Paymaster specifically, is permissionlessness, right? So you shouldn't have to ask us and go through us to be able to use our Paymaster. All the sort of flow for the average user should be able to be orchestrated completely on chain without us having to be there really. So how would that work, right? So you as the wallet operator, if you see that user wants to pay with ERC-20 tokens, you would basically delegate to a specific Paymaster the responsibility of gas fee payment, and they'll be created by us, our ERC-20 Paymaster. And when it comes to calling this operation on chain, this Paymaster would check if the wallet has approved tokens to it, right? And if it has, then it would draw tokens from the wallet, and in exchange, it'd be willing to sponsor this user operation in ETH, right? And afterwards, it goes to Chainlink, or it goes to some external oracle like Uniswap, and updates the price. So the next person, the next wallet who has who wants to use the Paymaster now can use it with the correct price, right? With the updated price. And so we're actually, as you can see, not in the loop for this whatsoever, really. The only time we actually come in to play is when it comes to the sort of accounting and management of this Paymaster, right? So all that we would come in for is like, hey, we see that as people are using the Paymaster, they're depositing more and more ERC-20 tokens, and they're draining more and more ETH. So we will have to often come in, take out the USDC and swap it for ETH, and then put it back to basically refill the ERC-20 Paymaster. And so otherwise, there's nothing else that we can do, right? That's basically all we can do. And so hopefully this can become a sort of standard for the ecosystem in a way that it doesn't require us to be the very direct and constant middleman. And so, these are the initial things that we're working on, right? We have a very sort of large vision ahead of us. We felt like these are some of the things that people are most looking forward to. And so, yeah, just as a final note, if you're a very talented engineer, we'd love to talk to you. We're currently hiring. And especially if you're building a smart contract wallet, yeah, please get in touch. We'd love to help you. We'd love to see how we can support you. And yeah, I'd love to open up to any questions now, if that's okay.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much for the presentation. Folks, just feel free to unmute your mic or just type it in the chat, and we'll be taking questions for 20 or 25-ish minutes. I'll give it a count of 5, and if no one starts, I'll be the one to ask the first question. Okay, I'll ask the first question, I guess. Yeah, so I actually really enjoy your presentation, and especially on the idea about like different types of Paymaster. I think it's just like clarify a bit. So regarding the verifying Paymaster, so it's like signing up, like signing a transaction, but like is so are saying like other paymaster sees that Pimlico signs a transaction and like sponsors transaction, or is it like from like Pimlico's own paymaster? I'm kind of confused about that part.
Yeah, of course. So the way it works is that it would be our paymaster that would go through, right? So we would have an on-chain smart contract, which corresponds to the paymaster interface, implements the validate user op function, validate paymaster user op function. And what that function would check simply is, okay, we have the user operation. Has Pimlico's is Pimlico's private key's signature in the user operation struct, really, and that's all it checks. And so basically that verifies that we signed it off chain with our sort of backend. And if that's the case, then yes, it would be willing to sponsor this user operation.
So it sounds like the other paymasters who are not a part of Pimlico still need to like sign up to say like I'll be taking private take signature from like Pimlico basically.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I wonder if there are any use cases for like third parties looking to see if our paymaster backend is signing it. For now, we found that people are quite all right with just using our own paymaster implementation. Right, because it's on purpose very, very minimal. So it doesn't really have any on-chain logic. And we tried to make it very, it's supposed to be very extendable in the sense that like you can customize the valid from valid until timestamps. So you can do like a time limit to when it's allowed for. And all the logic for signing can happen in your own backend, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Oh, we have questions trickling in. So Jiang is asking how much additional gas is needed for, I'm not sure about the context, but I think probably for the paymaster or the bundler. So that question, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. So for the bundler, it is 20. So normal Ethereum transaction is 21K gas, right? That's like the base. For a user operation, a 4% user operation, it's 26K gas minimum, as well, 28K gas minimum, as well as 26K gas shared between all the user operations in a bundle. Something I forgot to mention in the presentation actually is, the reason these entities are called bundlers is because the base case isn't that they take one user operation and put it on chain, is that they can take many user operations at the same time and put them all on chain inside one Ethereum transaction, right? So in a way, bundle them. And by bundling them, you actually save a lot of gas as an end user, because instead of gas fees being 56K, right, which is 28K plus 26K, it can be 28K plus half of 26K, so 28K plus 13K, which is 41K gas. Right, so you can already see like the more your user operations bundle with other user operations, the more you actually save on gas. And so people have been asking previously, like, okay, like, surely this is quite a large step up from base Ethereum transaction gas fees, and I would say that's a fair concern. Luckily, we've been seeing most adoption happening on layer 2s, where this extra gas doesn't really make much of a dent and people don't really notice, right? So we really expect most adoption to come on layer 2.
So what would be the design for tokens that do not have a Chainlink price feed? I think that's like referring to the sponsor, like the ERC-20 Paymaster, basically.
Right. So in that case, we're going to be looking to eventually also enable things like Uniswap usage, right? So ability to update the price using a Uniswap v3 TWAP oracle. And so that really should hopefully enable the usage of these ERC-20 Paymasters for tokens that don't have Chainlink aggregation. The only thing to keep in mind is that because of the validation rules that 457 provides, that like it says it must be true to allow these paymasters to be valid, you can't actually do the validation, so the price updating before you decide to sponsor the user operation, right? So with all, what we do is we actually update the price afterwards. And so the next person who uses will get the correct price, right? Now the issue comes when there's a long time between when one person uses it and then updates the price, and then the next person uses it, right? So then it might be that the price, starts deviating to some direction. And in that case, anyone will be able to come in, likely us, really, and update the price manually, right? Manually call a function that fetches from chaining or fetches from whatever Oracle. So the thing is that the more ERC-20 Paymasters you maintain, the more you're going to have to keep track of, okay, is this actually being updated? Is this actually being used? Because if not, we're going to have to come in and keep manually refreshing the price every so often, as soon as things start deviating from the main price, from the previous price.
Yeah, I also have a sense because I've been researching other paymaster as well, and sounds like most of them who support other ERC-20 token are mostly stable coins and pretty blue chip type of coins. Is that also what you've been seeing?
That's what we've seen the most demand for, right? Because people that just seems to be the most popular thing that people want to hold in their wallets, and therefore that's what they're going to pay most with typically. But yeah, anything that's Chainlink supported at this stage, we'll support very easily. It's just we have to make a conscious decision. Which ones do we want to deploy and maintain?
Yeah, definitely. So let's see if there's any more question. So no more for now, but I do have one more question regarding, because Pimlico is entirely focusing on the infra, building the infra for the wallet. But we also see that wallets have been building their own bundler infrastructure as well. And also you mentioned the defining feature of the bundler service from Pimlico is that they're you guys are building on TypeScript. Although that's also what I've been seeing from other wallets. So I just wonder, in terms of long-term adoption, what do you think is the advantage of third-party infra provider versus the wallets doing their own bundler service, for example?
That's a great question. And yeah, initially, that's sort of why we started. Part of the reason we started Pimlico is that we were seeing these wallets building their own bundles. And so that was wow, that's for me, that was crazy, right? Because this whole bundle system was supposed to be basically outsourced to third parties in a way, right? Because third-party searchers were supposed to be picking up these user operations and including them. And so when I realized that, wow, they're built it's the case that there's no service that's good enough, a bundle service that's good enough for them to be able to use. So they're building their own bundles. I was wow, this would be such a massive help for these wallets if we built one, because they would no longer have to do it, right? So actually, to my knowledge, we were coming in quite after these balls started building their own bundles, and we feel the reason it's eventually going to be very split in responsibility is that the bundles really are a quite well-defined and well-defined sort of script, a well-defined system, right? It's not something where you can really tweak it for your own wallet's benefit. There just needs to be one which is obviously very reliable, validates correctly, executes fast, and maintains reliability in case of things like reorgs, gas price increases, front running, and all these things. So wallets don't really benefit, in my opinion, that much from running their own bundle implementations. Oh, I can't. I think you're muted. You can't unmute yourself. Oh, there you go.
Okay, finally, yeah, I think it's the host set up some settings, but yeah, thank you for answering that. I definitely also agree that specialization is a great thing going forward, and also makes the system more decentralized so the wallet doesn't monopolize all the steps of the service, including the bundler.
Just for context, by the way, our bundle is going to be and is completely open source, right? So if someone wants to come in and be like, hey, we don't want to just call someone an API, we want to run our own bundler, that'll be very easy for them to do, right? It's just like we can sort of optimize more by running it ourselves at like larger batches, bundle more user operations together than if they ran it themselves. But if they want that self-sovereignty and self-reliability that they don't want to like trust some third-party providers, that's absolutely going to be an option.
Yeah, that's definitely great. And maybe also my follow-up question is regarding that, because you're making it very open source. And so I just wonder, for the firm in the long term, do you see it more as like an infra provider or more as like a for-profit kind of business? Because by like providing this like open source kind of infrastructure, people can deploy their own bundler, and this is on the like business perspective is kind of like damaging to our own profits. So just wonder like what's your take on that in terms of what do you see it more as an infra provider or as a for-profit kind of business? Yeah,
I mean, we see it as I mean both, really. So we are a for-profit company in that sense, if that's what you're asking. Our vision to how we approach open source is that we really want to make sure that, like, for individuals who have like very not especially special needs, that they can run the infra themselves, right? They can run their own bundler with our code base, basically. So they can set it up, they can run it for themselves if they want to. They can deploy their own ERC-20 Paymasters, for instance, right? They can deploy their own verifying Paymasters if they want. But especially for bigger players who don't want to, or don't have the time, or don't want some more expertise, and want to outsource the actual running, the day-to-day running of these infra tools, then that's where we're really focused on, like, hey, this is probably not enough for you, right? Probably you want someone who's like hyper optimized this, who has all these like fail safes and safe, who you can be really sure that the infra is going to work, like no matter what, and like maybe even have some like custom extras on top, right? So we're really focused on when it comes to the business model of larger enterprises, collaborating with them.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. It's more like a free tier and also the added like fee tier type of business model. Thank you for that. Since I don't see additional question, I'll just keep asking, making this more like a podcast style, but people still please type in any question you want. Don't want to be monopolizing, but yeah, so I have another question, because you definitely know there are additional like pure infra play kind of player like StackUp, or there's the Ethereum official like ETH Infinitism. I know like they are writing their own bundle services as well, and also in like different languages. So I just want to ask you, like, what do you see as the difference like of Pimlico versus them, maybe except from like implementing it using TypeScript?
Oh, I mean, TypeScript was never supposed to be a prime differentiator for us. It was just a small design decision that we made, right? I feel like I'm actually really happy. I'm extremely happy that these other players are also popping up who are building similar services. Because I mean, I'm not sure if you've seen the data, but like there's a long way to go for account abstraction for ERC-20 wallet usage, right? So I absolutely feel genuinely like, these players being in the field actually grows the pie way more than they sort of take away by any sort of competition, right? I feel like things like, I mean, it's many small things that I think are differences. So for instance, ERC-20 Paymaster, we're very focused on making sure it's permissionless, right? Making sure that like we don't need to be in the loop for that. For the types for the bundle thing, we're very focused on sort of the reliability aspect, right? Making sure all the type safety contributes to making sure there's going to be no issues when you run the script, that you can be sure that it's going to continue running, and that you can be sure that any user operations are going to be included on chain, right? And a fast speed as well. There's so many things that we're still figuring out, but I feel like we provide some unique some unique things for wallets, which I haven't seen many other people provide.
We have one more question regarding Paymaster in the chat. So the question is Token Paymaster open source yet? I believe it is, as you mentioned. And also wondering what kind of storage accesses the validate function for the Paymaster should touch, because there's like a log or forbidden opcode type of thing. I'm not sure if that's also the same for Paymaster, but I think.
Yeah, so we're actually open sourcing it this week with all the things that come along with it. Everything's already done. We're just doing final end-to-end testing at this point. So it should be this week. We'll make a big post about it, obviously. And what kind of storage accesses validate paymaster use op should touch? So validate paymaster use op is the function that's restricted in what it can touch. It's going to be touching primarily the token balance of the user, of the wallet that's sending it, right? And so it can touch this external wallet state because it's a very technical reason, but basically ERC-20 allows for you to access state that's associated with the sender wallet, which means like it's, for instance, in a dictionary mapping where the sending wallet is the key, and then there's whatever value you want at the end of it, right? And so it can access this. What it can't access is just general outside state, like, for instance, the Chainlink Oracle price, right? So, and that's why we can't do that in the validate paymaster use op, and we have to do that in the postal, right? There's other providers which what they've decided to do is make it so that the price is sort of determined more in their backend. And so that signature that they sign on the backend, which includes the price, is part of the paymaster and data field that is submitted on chain. And so it gets decoded inside the paymaster contract itself, so they can get the latest price. However, what that leads to is that means that you're very much relying on their backend to get ERC-20 sponsorships, right? And so our design decision, we focused on trying to maintain that permissionlessness. Yeah, and so yeah, you're right. Paymaster has to be staked. Checking the feed rate. So no, even if it is staked, it cannot access general external storage. If it's staked, it can access self-storage and this associated storage with the sender. Oh, I think you mute again.
Oh, can you guys hear me now? Sorry,
Yes.
My internet was dropping for a sec. I thought I was hacked. Oh, so we're okay. So I guess you finished answering the last question about storage, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, is that the same also for like Bundler as well? Because they also have the storage kind of like data access restriction, I suppose.
I mean, the bundler is not an on-chain entity, right? The bundler is an off-chain relaying script, really. So the bundler is actually one who validates the storage access rules themselves, and they decide based on the defined logic. They don't have any choice. They check the logic that's defined by the ERC to make sure these paymasters and these wallets don't access the forbidden state and don't use forbidden opcodes. So the bundlers are like a very off-chain entity here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I have another question, maybe more on the business side, because we were like interviewing with Biconomy last week, and they also have like a two business kind of business model, but it's more like they provide the actual like smart contract implementation.
Oh yeah.
Different like DApps. So I just wonder, do you see Pimlico like going for like a different track, or also consider maybe implementing like some smart contract wallet for the dApps as well. Yeah.
Actually, we're not really looking for that. We really want to maintain a sort of very horizontally generalized solution. In the sense that we want to be focused on that underlying infrastructure layer that supports wallets, as opposed to trying to compete with them. I see lots of value in Biconomy's approach of trying to sort of vertically integrate the whole AA stack. When it comes to building the smart contract wallet itself, building the end UI, building the bundlers and paymasters that they use. We feel like we want to focus just on that one layer, but be the best at that one layer.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And another question may be more referring to like the AA stack, because we know that before the protocol for ERC-20 was out, there's already like a lot of AA wallets. And the like tech solution by Biconomy, even like nowadays, are some of the paymasters are like using a relayer network, using like meta transaction, which are not like necessarily ERC-2037 compatible. So I just wonder, for like the long term of the account abstraction like market, what do you see will be the final solution? Is it like everyone will be adopting the standard, or is it more like even solutions from before the standard will be coexisting with like the standard? Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's this idealistic end goal that eventually we'd like to see an EIP, and not an ERC, but an EIP, which converts automatically every single externally owned account, so every single non-smart contract account, to a sort of base upgradable smart contract implementation, right? So basically swapping every single account to being a smart contract account. And this is very idealistic, but I feel there's paths which can lead to that. And then also as part of it, making the entry point contract actually be a part of the protocol, right? So if we did that, then we would save a ton of gas fees, because this validation that we're now doing on chain can be put back into the protocol layer, which shouldn't cost should cost a lot less than actually executing direct EVM bytecodes. And when it comes to like backwards compatibility, as you asked, I'm actually not sure. I mean, many of the wallets that we've been interacting with, for instance, Gnosis Safe, they not so long ago released a new version which now allows people to put like an ERC-437 module in their safe contract, which makes it compatible with 437. So I'm definitely expecting lots of these new wallets, if they're not going to migrate fully, to maybe just allowing modules for compatibility with this ERC, right? And being able to leverage that.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And we have another question in the chat. So asking, when that happens, bundlers infra will disappear, right?
I think it's the wrong order of messages. I think the first one is, how are you looking at it when changes were a yes. Yeah, exactly. That's correct. So if native if native AA happens, there shouldn't be a need for specialized bundler entities anymore. That should just be something that's taken care of by the block builders, really.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited for the different native AA solutions that are going to be coming out. I especially like that so many chains are experimenting with different approaches, right? So there's Starknet, which has their own approach. There's ZK Sync, which has their own approach. Some people are very are also deciding to sort of stick to EVM equivalency and leverage a lot of what 437 has to offer, which would mean that they get access to all the compatibility with the EVM, while getting most of the benefits of account abstraction, while also getting the extra benefit that they're on layer 2, and therefore they're paying very low gas fees for the users. Users are paying very low gas fees because it's a layer 2, typically get a very low, a lot lower fees, and so they get a ton of the benefits of AA without having to do native AA. but I just want to see a lot more experimentation. I think that I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, I'm also very excited about it, especially like ZK Sync and StarConnect you mentioned have like native support for account abstraction, only one account type, very clean. And in terms of that, I think earlier in the talk, you also mentioned that you guys are like experimenting on layer 2 as well. And for that part, maybe the bundler is not needed for like those layer 2, but they still have like their own paymaster similar to like ERC-20 So I wonder in terms of like layer 2 infrastructure, is that been like the focus of your development, or what's the like split between like layer 1 versus layer 2 in terms of like the future development? Yeah.
I mean, honestly, right now we're very much focused on EVM compatible or EVM equivalent chains, right? We feel that we want to use the highest leverage that we can at this stage, and eventually, once we've sort of deployed and the dust is settled, then I think we're going to make sort of moves onto non-EVM compatible chains. And I mean, layer 1 versus layer 2 doesn't really matter in that sense, because like as long as it's EVM equivalent or EVM compatible, it's really all the same, right, on a technical level.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, me asking that question was mostly because I see lots of smart contract wallets mostly focusing on layer 2, but I think on the infrastructure level, it's not much difference as per your answer to that. Yeah, I think we are actually technically 5 minutes over the time. So I'll just be pausing here to see if folks have like any last minute questions to ask, or otherwise, it'll be a great talk for today. Yeah. And are you coming to Montenegro as well?
I'm not sure yet. I haven't. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Should I?
You should. It's like London is not that far. Yeah. I mean, folks from Asia are, myself included, are going there like taking a 20-hour or something flight. Yeah.
Oh my. Oh wow. How many stops?
It depends, but mine's like 2 stops. Cool. Yeah, I don't think there are any additional questions. So I guess that's it for today. Thank you so much,
Cool.
Chris, for a very deep dive into the technicalities and all of the business model of Pimlico, and hope to potentially see the team in Montenegro and also the Hacker House that we'll be hosting in roughly two weeks. Thank you so much for tonight.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye.